All right. Well, it is a Monday and I'm not traveling. So I actually get to hang out at home, which means I get to be on the Twitch and the YouTube here with my friend Roberto Cortez. Good morning. Well, excuse me. Good evening, Rad Cortez. I was got to do the math in my head. You're +7 on me. So thanks for hanging out with me in the evening.
Hi,
I
Nate.
do
It's
appreciate
really
that.
pleasure to be here with you. So thank you so much for the invitation. It's really happy to be here.
Well, my pleasure, man. I know you and have been bumping into each other for a while, and so I'm
Yeah.
glad we finally got an opportunity to hang out here on the Twitches and the YouTubes. We'll see what kind of trouble it gets us into. So
Okay.
let's start where I always start. So what's your origin story? How did you get into this weird software space that we inhabit? This going around places, talking to people, teaching people. What brought you to where you are today?
Okay. So that's probably a very long story. Let
Fantastic.
yeah, no, but I'll try to condense some stuff, right? Um. So I'm guessing, and I have to try to think why that had happened. But I mean, for some reason, when I was young, right, I wanted to create like a web page, right? And we were talking maybe 97,
Okay.
maybe 96, maybe even sooner. I can't remember, right? But of course, like probably a lot of people, I started with computers, with gaming. Like
Yes.
I own an Atari, and one of the interesting about the Atari is, so maybe I'm just rambling here. Like I'm not like following like a complete order. I'm just like talking as far as I remember things, right? So I'm from Portugal. Well, I'm not exactly from Portugal. I live in Portugal, but I'm from Venezuela.
Okay.
So actually, when I got the Atari, it was in Venezuela still, right? And when I moved to Portugal, they didn't have Atari here, right? They didn't,
Interesting.
and then Venezuela. I mean, at that point, and still now, I mean, it has like the third highest oil reserves in the world, right? So there is a lot of like American companies exploring that oil, and even though
Hmm.
uh, Venezuela and the US, they don't get along. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe I mean maybe in the last 20, 25 years, maybe more. I mean, at that time, like, and we're talking in the 80s, right? So there was like a lot of American influence in Venezuela, right? So even my father worked for an American company that was like working over there. So we did have access to a lot of technology stuff from the US in Venezuela. But when I came to Portugal, there was none. But I still bring my Atari,
Sure.
right? So, and I always kept that interest, right? And then I started to evolve, and then, well, just getting like a regular PC and playing those games. And then it came this wonderful thing that people were talking, which was called internet, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Maybe in Portugal it was around 94, 95. I guess I'm not sure. I was not like the first people to get it, but I definitely was on the first group, like of
Early
people.
adopter.
Yeah, an early adopter. I mean, and we're talking about like people using modems, right? And people need to know what a modem was. And yeah, I mean, I remember that I was like in this like fair or something. Then there was this like really small computer, like people had it connected to the internet, and just like people were amazed and stuff. And well, I say I need to have this, right? So I went home, I bothered my parents, and well, they promised to give me access if I had good grades, which I was able to get. So so yeah, I got internet, and then from the internet, right? I started to like. I mean, at the time it was mostly like web pages, RC,
Sure.
things like that. And yeah, and then for some reason I got that interest of just trying to build web pages, right? So I mean, you were looking on these web pages, and then, well, I have something that I want to write. And I do remember that at that point, and maybe I was like, I don't know, maybe 15, 16, maybe, I mean, between 14 and I don't know, I can't remember the age.
Hmm.
But I was really, and I still am, of course, really a big fan of this anime called Dragon Ball,
Ah,
right? So I thought about like creating this web page that was going to translate like the story Dragon Ball to Portuguese, right? And I was going to like just create like this web page with characters biographies, like the stories, some pictures, right? So then I started to learn how to write HTML and CSS, right? And I remember I used like this really cool editor called Hot Dog. I don't know if you remember that. Maybe not, but I mean, there was like these really cool software and applications at that time. And then this came the occasion when I wanted to do something more, right? And then we started to think, well, how can we create like this dynamic behavior on pages, right? So I turned to JavaScript, right? And then things just kept evolving, right? And then I learned some JavaScript, but still, I don't know, for some reason I felt that was not enough.
Sure.
And then I turned to applets. Then I saw like,
hey, there's this thing called Java.
Yeah, I found this thing called Java. I found these things called applets, right? And then I mean, there was like the Java website that had these like huge JavaDoc stuff. I have no idea what JavaDoc was.
Right.
Nothing. So I went to the bookstore, and then I found these like I still have it. I have it there in my garage. I bought this like book. We were saying like learn Java in 30 days. It was for JavaOne or Java 1.1 or something, right? And so yeah, I started reading that. At the same time, I just like joined high school, and then I joined the computer science school side of things, which basically they were learning as they were teaching. I was learning how to program in Pascal. So basically, I was just like learning Pascal and Java at the same time. So I was using Pascal for the school stuff, and then Java for the web stuff. And yeah, I mean, I was using Notepad to write Java, right?
Yes.
I have no idea what an editor was, and then we were just like compiling stuff on the terminal, and then just getting all these errors, and then trying to figure out where the issues were. On Pascal, you still have like some sort of editor. You still have like whatever like Turbo Pascal thing, right? It came with its own editor. I mean, it was not like thing. I mean, it didn't have there was no things like autocomplete or like
right. IntelliSense didn't exist back then.
I mean, the Turbo Pascal editor had keyword colors, I believe.
Okay, that's a nice help.
That I think that was the only thing, right? And I mean, and I think that was pretty much the beginning, right? So
sure,
I started to learn all that stuff. At high school, I also learned like. Then they moved from Pascal to C. Then I learned C as well, and then it was just like going really deep into all the stuff, right? So for a time, I was just like writing Pascal C, and Java was not even thinking about that for like doing backend stuff or doing like, I don't know. I have no idea what people were doing in Java at that point. I was just using it to write a couple of applets for web. I do remember that there was this like kids school, right? But that was just kids schools to teach kids how to play with computers. When I say play with computers, not just, I mean, of course, playing games, but was just basically to teach people how to use a computer.
Right.
Especially, I mean, we're talking like in the 90s, right?
Yep.
Not many people had computers at home, and most people have no idea what a computer was.
Right.
Much less know how to use it. Right? So they had. I'm pretty sure that in the US they have something similar. Right? They have these schools where basically they were teaching people how to what to do with the computer, right? So the owner of that school was one of my neighbors, and then he learned that I was like programming stuff, right? And then he came to me and asked, "Well, can you just do some games for the kids at the school?"
Sure.
And yeah, then I
started sure, of course.
To think about like doing a couple of games, right? And then I mean, the games were like very basic. I did the how is that called? Maybe in English it's called the Hangman, right? Where you have
Yes.
the you do some questions,
Yep.
and you have
Yep.
to guess like a word, and then
Hmm.
if you miss like words, then you get
Right.
like the hangman being drawn
Yep.
on
The head and the neck. Yep.
yeah. So yeah, I did that, and I wrote that in Java. That I'm not sure. I don't think I have that code anymore.
The
But
internet never
it'll
forgets. I'm sure
probably
it's out
still
there.
work.
I'm sure it
Uh,
would, right? I mean, I got to imagine Java is very good at the backwards
yeah.
compatibility. Fuel
Uh,
Stable says that Turbo Pascal was the peak of humanity. So there you go. And
oh yeah. I
maybe,
mean,
yeah,
I do remember that. I mean, I didn't do like really crazy stuff with Pascal, but I do remember that I wrote these really kind of like I also had that that I don't remember what was the name, but you have these Casio calculators that they
yeah,
were able to program BASIC.
yeah,
So even though I was not really that big on BASIC, I did also learn a couple of things in BASIC, and but on Pascal I actually wrote like these math library that was able to basically do all of those math functions that the Casio was able to do. Right? I don't remember the name, or I don't know the names of the math functions in English, but basically, you have functions for basically calculating
right,
uh, the area of like pieces of geometric pieces, right? Or going like equations things. So I mean those things. I mean they were not really complicated to write in Pascal. Basically, you only
right,
had to code the formula and code like input and output parameters. Maybe probably there was already libraries out there that have done that, but it was not really like a big thing. But pretty much teach me how to play with stuff. Then I did something similar to with C. But I mean, I think that at that point, the interesting stuff was that you have no idea what was out there, and even if there was already libraries that were doing what you were writing, right? There was no way for you to learn about those, or I mean, it was really hard, right? You either find it in books, maybe
right,
you already had internet, right? And then you maybe can find some of those. Usually, the things that you will find were like things that were already developed by someone on a university somewhere, and they were
right.
publishing some university websites, which were fun. But basically, I think that was the beginning of everything, right?
Sure.
So from the Atari gaming, uh, it is interesting because I mean, so we were talking before this before we joined here, we were talking, right, and we're saying like at this point I think I don't have much patience to some of the stuff these days, right? And I was thinking that one I did get a lot of patience at that time, right?
Sure.
So one, I mean, I don't want to sound like I mean, sorry, I'm missing the right term, but sometimes we have this feeling where, well, the old generation, we always complain about the new generation,
Right. Right.
and
The
some,
kids these days.
yeah. Um, the point is, at least in my view, we were privileged in the sense
Mm,
that we were born in a time where we were already able to see how things evolve. I mean, you're still
right.
able to see it, how things evolve, right? But just a quick example, right? So I wanted to play games. I didn't have enough memory. Well, you have enough memory, physical memory, but not available memory, right? So the game won't load. So what should I do, right? You didn't have internet, or at least the internet was not evolved at the point where
Right.
you just have like things like Stack Overflow or some other website where you could just find, oh, I have this error, what should I do? And then they'll, yeah,
Mhm.
just paste this here on that file and you're done. But you don't even understood what happened, right?
Right.
So were these occasions where you have to go and read the MS-DOS manual and read it like a 500 page and try to learn, okay, so this memory management, this how memory works. So you have to go and try to tamper with, like, how's that called, the auto exec bat?
I once deleted my auto exec bat and config sys because I tried to install something, did it incorrectly, and all these files are scattered at root. And so I was trying to clean up root by getting rid of files that I didn't know what they were, because what could they possibly be used for if I didn't know what they were? And then when my computer wouldn't boot, I had to call a much more experienced computer person than myself, who then, very patiently explained to me that you deleted the things that your computer needs to boot up. Here, I'll give you some that you can use. So it's good times. It's good times.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I never deleted, but I probably changed them so much that the computer didn't recognize them anymore and didn't boot up, right? So what did you do at that point? Basically, you have to format and then restart,
right?
Because you have no idea what you changed that broke,
right?
And then you learn how to do backups on stuff to just restore to the old files, right? But the thing I'm trying, or the point I'm trying to make, I mean, at that occasion, or at that period, right, it was really hard to find someone that knew everything, right?
Oh, sure.
And especially you didn't have like the internet that you have these days, where you just go and find the answers in like 10 seconds, right? So you have to be patient. You have to read. You have to experiment, right? I mean, that thing still happen today, right? And I mean, again, I didn't want to look to say, hey, we are the good guys and the new guys are they don't know anything.
It's just different.
It's just different. It's just that right now it's just way easier for people to start. I mean, that's a good thing, right? But it is interesting to see how things evolve and the ways that you came from a world where you if you wanted to do things, you have to go for like these really big manuals and search over there and experiment to just find the answer in like 10 seconds on the internet.
Right. No, that's a great point. I think the phrase that we would use here in the Midwest is, I had to walk to school both ways uphill in the snow, and you kids now have these fancy warm buses that you get to sit on. It is, you bring up a great point about how much this stuff has changed. Fuel's got this comment about how back in the day you used to turn on your computer and you're at a basic interpreter or you're at a C prompt. And I saw some YouTube thing on that where they introduce kids to 20, 25, 30-year-old technology. And I'll admit, I take great pleasure when I'm watching an older show or movie with my teenager of explaining to him how that's what a TV used to look like. That's what a computer used to look like. That's what a phone used to look like. That's what a cell phone used to be, because it's so different. My son is the same age as the iPhone. And so for him, a phone is a slab of glass. And this idea that it is anything other than that is just completely foreign to him. And so it's really interesting to see some of those shifts. And I think you're right. There is this tendency for those of us that grew up in it, look and say, you kids have it so easy today because we used to have a shelf full of books that had all that information. And we couldn't just go to the interwebs because it didn't exist, and Stack Overflow didn't exist. You couldn't just type in the error message at a command line or at a browser line and boom, here's the answer. We had to work for it. Now that's not always the case, right? I mean, I'm sure if you ask people who preceded us, I remember talking to a manager of mine who, when he was at my age, younger developer, he walked by someone flipping through a stack of cards, and he asked the guy, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm debugging." So I for one welcome our new abstractions and our new ability to just Google the answer to more and more of these things.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I guess the point I was trying to make is, I mean, we became like really patient at that point, and probably the people that predecessed us were even more patient than us, right? Just waiting for the games to load, just waiting for the computer to load, just trying to come up with stuff, right? So I think that I'm not saying that like people are not able to do that today, but I think it gave us like other qualities for what we are doing today, right?
Right. Yeah. Now, as Fuel says, we can just ask Chat GPT, and then we'll get a very convincing lie.
Yeah.
And I also agree. This is a good comment too, Fuel. I complain about everyone. I think my wife would agree that I do that as well. So, yeah, this is a good point. That we had. This is something I've had to explain to my son as well, that our computer games now are so much more realistic. In fact, one day I was playing FIFA and my wife glanced over and said, "Oh, who's playing?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, what game is that?" And I said, "It's FIFA." And she's like, "What?" Just at a glance, it looked like it was an actual broadcast of a game. And so I had to explain to him that, when I was his age, we didn't have, like, he talked me over the holidays here playing one of his first person open map kind of games. And so I got into it, which was good, except for the fact that it is a big time sink. Kind of forgotten how much time you can spend in one of these games if you're a completist like I am and you want to complete every mission and beat the game. But I had to explain to him that we didn't have open map games for most of my career. Everything was very constrained, and I was thinking about this earlier. Those things you see on Twitter. Tell me you're a programmer without saying you're a programmer.
Yeah.
Tell me how old you are without saying how old you are. I think a lot of us could do it based on game systems. And I remember thinking back to the game system when I was in college. We had a kid who he had spent like 2 weeks as part of his National Guard duty. He had to hang out at the guard station for 2 weeks, and he just played Goldeneye for like 2 straight weeks. And so he mastered all the boards. And at that point, for the rest of the semester, it was no fun playing Goldeneye with him because he knew all the boards in and out, knew where every spawn point was, and he was just obliterating us because he just had it all down pat, and it wasn't any fun anymore.
Yeah.
But we didn't have these expansive, huge maps, find the hidden locations and all these side missions. It was just, everything progresses linearly and you can't go back and clear this board and move on. And we liked it, right?
Yeah, I mean for sure. I played a lot when I still play right today, but at that point, I guess that a lot of people from our industry did play a lot of games.
Sure.
And at that point, I did play a lot of Doom and Quake. I guess
Yes.
those were my
Mm-hmm.
favorite games at that point. And I tried. I don't know. Maybe I guess again we go again with that conversation. I mean, the old is good, the new is bad, which is
it's just different.
Wrong. But I tried to play the new games that you have like on PlayStations, and I still prefer how to play the old games, right?
Right.
So even the other day, I was like, I was like on an airport, and I had like 5 or 6 hours to kill. So I just installed DOSBox on my computer, which is the DOS emulator, and I just like load like a bunch of old games like Heroes of Might and Magic. Not sure if you know that or you remember that, which was like this game where you have like this hero where you have control troops, and basically it's just like turn based.
Sure.
But still, like the graphics were horrible, right?
Right.
For today's standards. Right. But I don't know. I still have way more fun with those games from the past than the ones that you have today.
Right. Well, as Phil points out, now we got to wait for clusters to start. So maybe things really haven't changed. We've just moved where the abstraction point is. But yeah, that's a good point. When I was first kind of stumbling into this game, that my son, of course, has played. I don't know. Well, as a parent, I don't want to know how many hours he has spent on this game.
Sure.
And so for him, of course, this is all so easy, and I'm trying to figure out like, wait, which button does what? Because for a long time, our games had 2 buttons and a D-pad, and we liked it. And now you've got multiple D-pads and multiple joysticks and multiple triggers. And it still takes my brain a little while to process which one's R1 and which one's R2 and which one's R3. And wait, so this is up, up, down, down, triangle, square, square, X.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so there's only so much that my aging brain can possibly,
probably that's the issue. We are so old that we are only used to getting like 2 buttons.
Right. We just don't know what to do with. Wait, I'm supposed to mash what keys to do what now? And speaking of DOSBox, Fuel Snable played Miner 2049er. Wow, yeah, I don't even remember that one. That's
but I don't know. I mean, picking on games. I mean, I'm like a big World of Warcraft fan and player, right? So I play a lot. Well, not as much as I used to play when it came out, right? And I mean, World of Warcraft is a massive multiplayer online game.
Right.
So if you know the game well, you have a character. You have to go and do quests and gather resources or gather gear, and the amount of abilities that you have, that's quite high. That's yeah, casual. Casual is 8 hours. So if you go
Right. Anything under 8 hours a day, you're a casual player.
yeah. But I mean, I'm completely fine with that kind of game, because I mean, you have like, my keyboard is all binded with abilities, so I'm mostly fine. It's not about the number of keys, but when you think about consoles, and you think on, and basically the first one that I had was an Atari, and then I had those Sega Genesis, right?
Yep.
Where basically on the Atari you have like one control stick, one button. Then you have Master Systems and the Nintendo, which has what, like 2 buttons, and then
Right.
the Super Nintendo already had like 4 or 6, and then the Genesis Mega Drive added like also 6. But I mean, there were increasing buttons on the joysticks, but I still felt that the games at that point, you'll just pick up the controller and then you're able to start playing like 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, for the so I own a PlayStation 3. I think I never got higher than that, because I just thought it was going to be a waste. And I did play a lot of Tekken, which is this fighting game. And basically, you use the PlayStation controller, which has like all these buttons, right? It has like 4 here. Then you have the things on the side, which is like more 4, so that's 8. And then you have like 2 joysticks kind of things, and I don't know, it's still probably like 12 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it just felt like, yeah, I can just pick up the joystick and play the game and throw some punches, but then just to be able to throw in some combinations of like moves of with the character, it just took so much time to learn, right? Because just like, okay, like square, triangle, right, I don't know how that calls, right tail up,
Trigger.
or trigger, or whatever. And yeah, so and and that was, I mean, but if you pick it up on even like these games that have that evolve right with us. So I guess one favorite game of everybody is Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I used to play a lot of Street Fighter, not only in the arcades, in home, in computer, right? And then they didn't do Street Fighter game for a long time. So the last couple that they did was like Street Fighter 3 for the arcades, which basically was still, it has like a little bit of updated graphics, but it will still follow pretty much everything from the old stuff. And then they came with Street Fighter 4 for the PlayStation 3, and well, the other consoles for the same at the same level. Right? I'm not sure which Xbox is the one for compared to PlayStation 3 and maybe Xbox One. I don't know. But at that point, I mean, even though I did bought the game, I enjoyed playing it. Even though they tried to keep the same look and feel, or keeping the pretty much the same thing, but they added all these like mash button things, and then
Right.
I didn't really enjoy it, because, well, the old combinations were still there, but you have to learn all this new stuff,
Right.
and maybe I didn't have any patience for that anymore.
Right. Well, and to your point, they have to teach you this as you go. I mean, that was one of the interesting things I was noticing as I was playing through this game. And you know, I look at it from my perspective in terms of how you build a UI, how you teach, et cetera. And there's all these little moments in the game where they're teaching you the next skill you need to know in order to progress in the game. And I would love to just be a fly on the wall when they're having those kind of conversations at the people who write these games, make these games, you know, where they think of that, you know, where the narrative points are to introduce this technique and then teach it, because it is, incredibly complicated in some cases to know you have to do these 5 things and then that'll unlock this, and then you press these 3 keys together and you can do this move. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, how would you teach that and figure that out organically?
Yeah,
And you wouldn't.
I see that. The problem is, I understand what you say, and I see that on those games. The problem is, you learn that ability or that trick when they teach you on the game, and then you forget it.
Oh yeah, guilty as charged there. I mean, there were several moves that I learned, but then you forget it, and then if you set that down for a week and try to come back to it, and you're like, yeah, I don't remember how to do this.
Yeah.
I mostly just mash buttons and see what happens. And, what could possibly go wrong? But so Fuel's got some interesting stuff in here, talking about how read a blog about 1982 for Atari 2600. Each level was generated from 1 byte. And then they had a pseudo random algorithm that computed the next byte in other words, the next level, which was reversible, so you could go backwards. I think that's another interesting aspect of this. We think back to some of these game systems that some of us cut our teeth on. They were very underpowered. And I've thought about this before, the computing power that put human beings on the moon and brought them back. Odds are you and I sitting wherever we are right now have more compute around us than NASA had in the 60s. So it is interesting in that regard to see how the compute has changed, to see what that's enabled, and then to see what the folks have done with that power.
Yeah, so I'm just writing a couple of commands here just because I want to check something. That cannot be right. Okay, so my World of Warcraft installation folder is 90 gig.
Wow. Okay.
So now you're talking about these they were building these games with like 1 byte, and then now you need like 90 gig to
right
for a computer.
Well, think about the old cartridges. I didn't even have a clue how much space a cartridge had in an old NES system. No even idea what that must have looked like. And so Fuel says the Atari had 128 bytes of RAM. Yeah, that's
he was saying that Paul was very impressed when it came out. So I guess that at that time, massive multiplayer games were not really that popular, right? And Blizzard was a really, I'm not sure, I don't think they are right now at this point, but Blizzard was a really good game studio. Most of their games are always hit, right?
Yeah.
Things like Warcraft, the strategy game, and even StarCraft, also strategy game, but played on the space. I think that they were pioneers in a lot of things regarding gaming. So at least on real strategy games, most of the games that they have at that point, not Blizzard, but at least generally, well, they have like these 2 or 3 factions, or at least mostly like 2 factions, and then most of like the units you can control. The graphics were different, but their abilities were the same no matter the faction that you choose from, right? And StarCraft, I think it was a pioneer on that point because they came up like 3 different factions you can choose from, and all of them were completely different, like units you could control with completely different abilities, which pretty much gave this notion of like playing rock, scissors, paper.
Sure.
Right, where basically there was no matching between one or the other, and then you have always like you have these units which counters the other one, and then you have the one that counters the other one, right? And so there were pioneers on that, and so they always able to come up with like these really cool concepts, and even like one of the most popular game constants that you have these days, which is Dota and League of Legends, right? It actually started as a World of Warcraft 3 custom map that someone created, right? And it was on the engine of Warcraft 3, right? So, and because they already have all of those things, they came up with the concept of like the zero that you get control, but you also have troops, and then someone came up with that idea. And now it was interesting. They tried to actually come up or gain control of the IP of that, but they couldn't get it. Right. So now because it was not on the terms, right? So companies pick up that concept and created games around that. But now they have this interesting thing where even if you come with your own custom apps using their custom builders, the IP of whatever you create is theirs. So
sure,
they lost a lot of money with that concept.
Well, that's another interesting point. A lot of these games have gotten very social, and some of that has been abused. Clearly some folks don't know how to be nice to other human beings when they have anonymity or the separation of the interwebs. But, certainly when I was growing up, games were not a particularly social activity. I mean, some you could play with a friend, but you all had to be in the same space. There was, I still remember sometimes, dragging a bunch of computers together and networking them and doing that kind of stuff. But
that was awesome. You have like these LAN parties. I had them with a lot of friends. You spend there like a weekend,
right?
Place. You have like these people like bringing these like really big towers, right?
Yes. It's portable for some value of portable. And I think that's pretty fascinating that you can have these same social experiences with your friends, even if you're not in the same physical space. And I think especially during the pandemic, that was particularly welcoming for a lot of folks, and then that's getting around or sort of leaving aside some of the issues of abuse and other things that some folks have done. And it is amazing to me how people can be such, can be very not nice, I guess would be the place way I can put it. I'd like to use strong language, but I won't. But yeah, it is really interesting to see how this stuff has evolved and will continue to evolve over the course of the next 20, 30 years. And when I see how far things have come from, you think about the Atari all the way to what we have today with some of these specialized platforms. And then you start thinking about what will happen, and so I always try to put this in the scope of my son. So what is my son's son someday going to be playing, and how radically different will that be from what he thought was absolutely amazing and was, cutting edge? And that'll be just like, oh yeah, we played some retro FIFA just for fun the other day, and all the graphics were so poor they weren't beamed directly into my neural cortex, or whatever it'll be, right? And I think that's one of the things that is both really exciting about our space and sometimes really frustrating, right? We've touched on this a little bit, but that challenge of keeping up is hard. And I think a lot of us when we're younger find it maybe easier, or we're more passionate about that. And then as you get older, your hobbies, your passions kind of maybe start to go in different directions. And we were talking about that in the pre-show. You picked up a musical instrument of late. Should we talk about that a little bit? Speaking of gaming,
so let me show it right
here.
There you go.
That's right. It's all about the drums, baby.
Yeah, so that's a drum kit, and for some, I mean, that's interesting because this is, I'm not sure if you know too much about drum kits, but you notice something different. This is like a digital drum kit,
right?
So it's not like an acoustic one, meaning it's all wires, and it's kind of like when you hit it, it's kind of you can probably hear it. Let's do it like this. So when you hit something like this, right? So this is what you hear.
Yeah.
So this is not really interesting,
right,
to hear, right? But if you put like some headphones, then you'll hear what the actual piece of the drum kit sounds like.
Sure.
And so it is interesting. Talking on the instrument side, you have electric guitars, right? But it's not like you still use strings, right? And, the drum was probably one of the first instruments that on the music industry world that they were able to build completely electronic, right? There is no acoustic sense of an electronic drum kit.
Sure.
And those became, of course, it cannot, depends, right? So now you have like really, really evolved digital drum kits that people are even using in concerts. But this is completely cool for like amateurs like myself. So a couple of things. It's like smaller than than a real kit, so it fits perfectly on my office. Even though it was noisy, it's still less noisy
Right.
than than an acoustic one, right? And it's really awesome to record stuff because I mean, if you notice over there.
Uh-oh.
Hello.
Wait. The interwebs are getting mad at us, Roberto.
Hello. Sorry, I think
I can hear you.
I just hook up. Can you see me?
Your screen is frozen, but I can hear you. So I'm guessing.
So probably I have to reconnect.
Okay. We do it live. We do it live, folks. He'll be back. We hope. We pray. So I did want to comment real quickly on blurry guy. All right, he's back. Let me add him to the stream. There he comes. Now we've got blurry guy. Yeah, we'll just call him blurry guy from now on. It's all good.
Oh man, what the hell happened with the video? That's strange because I was just trying to turn my computer to the drum
Right.
kit, and then one of the cables kind of like didn't pop off, but basically just
enough. Just enough.
Just enough. And now let me just try to restart Chrome.
Okay. Now this is the beauty of doing it live, is you never know what's going to happen, and so I wanted to comment on this. Fuel brought this up. You had to paint the screen raster line per raster line. And yeah, you're right. This never would have happened on a C64 because we never would have had this level of connectivity. And so, yeah, these new fancy computers, can't trust them. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That is the joy of doing a live show when we're moving things around. I've thought about this before, but this stuff works so well that it's like a surprise when it doesn't. And it's like, what is going on? How could this not just magically work? And then when it does,
the camera, I have to restart the camera somehow. I think there is like a terminal command for that. I can remember. I'll have to search it. So I think you're not going to be able to see me anymore.
Well, that's all right. We'll make it work. And I agree, Fuel. Sometimes I'm surprised it works at all. It is, when you think about the sheer number of moving parts we have in these systems, it is kind of amazing that the system works in its entirety. Sometimes,
the what I was going to say was, well, I have my old MacBook Pro connected over there to my drum kit, right? And the point is, because it's digital, then you can just hook it up to a laptop and it just record whatever you play directly to the computer, right? So it's way easier to do it, right? So even if you want, so regarding drum kits, right? You have like different sounds on different pieces, but also you do want to have different sounds for the type of playing that you're doing.
Sure.
Right. So if you have like an acoustic kit, you don't really have that much. Well, you could like go and adjust some of the things to be higher pitch or lower pitch, but then you have to adjust all the pieces. So it is it takes some time to do that, right?
Sure.
And the pieces are not able to do it completely to have like the sound that you want. So you either buy like a new drum kit with a different sound, or you have to have like all these different pieces that you could just play around. Now with the digital one, well, just press a button and then you'll just adjust it to whatever sound you want to play.
Sure.
So it is easier in that sense.
Right.
So for people that that are starting up. So yeah, so I started to learn how to play during the pandemic. I enrolled in like a music school. I go there like every week for like 2 hours. Then I just try to play as much as I can at home. I have a couple of so the school is quite interesting because they as a student they allow you to use the instruments that they have over there. So they have like an instrument per room. So before me deciding if I actually wanted to invest in the drum kit, I used the one that they have over there, and then I ended up buying my own.
Sure.
The funny story is, of course, the neighbor downstairs. He started complaining about that. even though he was not able to listen to the things, but he was feeling the vibration of the foot pedals.
Interesting.
So I cannot show it because the camera actually. I'm trying to
Sure.
restart the camera, but basically what I had to do, I had to like put this foam on the ground, and then I bought this platform that there are even more foam to put the foot pedals
Sure.
to absorb the vibration. And at least until now, he hasn't complained anymore. So, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I remember thinking about that when my son was kind of playing around with musical instruments at one point. Although he does play piano and guitar more or less, but there was a period where I think he was playing. I think he played the viola for a while, and I remember thinking, there's some instruments that are more appealing as a parent. Some I remember when I was in grade school, the kids who were playing violin, that was not always a particularly beautiful sound. And you're also thinking in terms of how large is this instrument that you're going to be dragging around, and I very much remember in grade school, one of my friends was a percussionist, and I'm pretty sure the drum that he had to drag around was almost his size. I mean, he was not a particularly big dude. And I just think, yeah, maybe that wouldn't be the best instrument to have, or like the tuba or something like that, where it's bigger than you, or so giant. But I have no musical talent. I can barely hum. That's about the extent of my abilities.
Yeah, I mean, this one, I mean, is not. I mean, you could carry it. I mean, it's still a pain to
Sure.
carry that, but it's not as like a pain. It's not the same pain on how to carry an actual, well, an acoustic one.
Right.
You can. I mean, all of these things are assembled in like a frame. Well, you also assemble the acoustic one on a frame,
Mm-hmm.
but you could actually pick the frame and carry it with you with all the stuff in it.
Sure.
Well, the acoustic one, you can do that, but I'm not even sure if it's going to go through the door.
Right. Yeah, definitely bulkier.
Yeah.
You got to think about how to transport it.
Bulkier, yeah. So it is. I'm quite happy with that. You could get. I mean, there are like different ranges, different prices, and you can always like buy new stuff to add.
Right. Always.
So yeah, I of course try to play some stuff. So I learned a couple of Rammstein songs. So it's not total metal, but it's kind of like calling
Sure.
like a Dutch. Sorry, it's like a German band.
Mm-hmm.
It's really popular here in Europe. Not sure if you heard about them in the US. Yeah, Devoxx.
I know the name. I can't say I'm particularly familiar with the work.
Yeah,
But,
the interesting thing about them is that all their songs are still. I mean, they have a couple of songs that they sing in English. They still keep the songs in German, so they sing in German. And then I the last song that I learned was from Metallica.
oh yeah.
So for whom the bell tools. So that's the one that I learned. It's not really that hard to play. So the interesting thing about the drum kit is that they have, so pretty much most of the songs have this basic rhythm. Of course, it may differ, but then everything is built around that rhythm. So as long as you learn like the basic stuff, then it's become more easy to just add stuff, because then you have the basic rhythm, then you either like add stuff or remove stuff. Of course,
Sure.
some songs add a lot of stuff, right? So the way that I usually approach stuff is I try, probably like we do in programming, right? So you look for the patterns in the song. So you learn the pattern thing, the things that always repeat, right? And then you just start adding like the things on top, right? Until you get the entire song.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a fairly strong connection, at least in my experience, between music and software, and I've never quite figured out what that connection is or where it comes from, but I definitely know a fair number of people in the space who have a pretty strong musical background. Fuel says that you should look up Dirty Loops and the song Coffee Break is Over. So I'll leave that as an exercise to the readers to do
I'll
later.
have a look.
So the other, I wanted to comment on this too with Fuel made this comment earlier, but he worked at Ericsson and learned a little bit about how 3G works in terms of how it hands off between radio base stations, as your car is moving. And, that's a really fascinating point. So many of these things we just take for granted, that you and I can share high def video and we are, 5,000 miles apart, and it'll all just magically work. And most of the time it does. That is pretty remarkable. I can remember when I would travel internationally when my son was really young, it was always this game of trying to find a time where we could call, and how much is that going to cost? And maybe I can call from my soft phone on my laptop, using like Google Voice or something. And then that eventually morphed into being able to use FaceTime. And FaceTime has been huge when I travel. It makes a big difference to see my family as opposed to just, talking, and less important now that my kid is a teenager. He's not quite as concerned when I'm here or not, or at least that's the way I view it. I don't know if he can, not sure if he's around or not, but it's all good. So
I have this really crazy idea that I'm going to try. That's
okay.
I hope that's going to work. So because the camera doesn't work and it's getting me annoyed, I'm just going to switch to the computer.
Okay.
So when things don't work, I'll just go to the computer.
That's right. That's why you have to have more than one. One is none. Two is one.
So now I just hope that copy paste works between computers.
Yeah, that's a thing I've actually taken a lot of advantage of. Thank you, Apple, for bringing that into the world, because, man, before, trying to get something as simple as a URL or a code from one place to another was considerably more challenging. I remember trying to log my son into something when he first started sort of virtual school during the pandemic, and getting extremely frustrated with this piece of software that was not allowing me to do this simple copy and paste task that I was trying to make happen. But so
yeah, and of course the copy paste doesn't work, so I have to go and I'm just gonna have to one of my Slack channels I have here. I'm gonna paste it to myself. Open on a new computer.
Why is so much of computing this Rube Goldberg machine of, okay, so I'm going to create a note and I'm going to paste it in there, and then I'm going to email the note to myself, and yeah, it's good times. Good times. This is what happens. We're doing it live. We're doing it live, as they say.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else? Is there anything else in the comments? I think I'm all comments. It's all good.
So it's taking some time.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
We can keep talking until I try to figure this out.
So one other thing that I was curious about, and I think you and I talked about this last time we were in the same meet space, but I watched a docu-series on HBO about 100-foot waves and surfing in Nazareth. And I'm just curious, if you have any thoughts, comments, experience about that. I mean, I was... This to me was a lot like watching that Free Solo documentary where this person climbs without ropes, and it feels a lot like that, in that these extreme surfers decide that, just these regular 4 or 5 foot waves, that's not fun at all. I want to go surf a wave that's, the size of an apartment building. It's remarkable to me that, of all places, Nazareth has just this perfect formation, apparently, of underwater mountain ranges and weather patterns that funnels some incredibly large and very dangerous waves to this spot.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, someone actually, one surfer. I mean, this is probably not a good thing to say now, but I just remember because it just came on the news maybe like a few days ago that one surfer actually lost his life in a way last week or a couple of days ago, right? And it happens. I mean, very frequently, because waves over there are really, really massive, and that's why surfers like to go over there to surf, right? Because that's where we're gonna find those waves. But yeah, I've been there sometimes just for vacations. Well, not occasion where they have all these big waves, but
Sure.
But usually that only happens during winter.
Right.
But yeah, it's really popular, and you see all these people coming from all over the world just to surf over there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty remarkable. It's amazing to me that somebody even looks at that and says, yeah, I'm pretty sure I could get a surfboard through that. I think I'd be just fine. That level of determination. And especially to your point, a lot of people have been injured doing that, and not exactly minor injuries, and they keep going at it. The whole idea that you need to be towed into the wave because they're so large, and you have to have this sort of cadre of people around you trying to help you if something goes wrong. Not my cup of tea, but that docuseries certainly tells me maybe that's not something that's I would ever want for my child to attempt as a hobby.
Oh yeah, so I don't know. Surfing was never something that pulled me. I did some skiing. Probably that's one of the, well, say, radical sports. If you have
Sure.
if you have to put it like, I don't know if there is like a classification of radical sports, but I guess that you'll have like surfing, snowboard, skiing on those. But I'm not really like a big skiing guy myself. I just know how to do it. But yeah, so I'm always, you cannot believe what I had to do. So I'm trying to get in with the new computer, and
Software's fun, isn't it?
It is. I mean, that's why I'm saying that I don't have any patience anymore to stuff. So let's see if I have. Oh yeah, I have some video here. So you're gonna have two of my.
Oh, we're gonna add that. Remove that one.
Okay, so I left the other one.
There we go. Okay, we got you back.
Oh no! You see that the quality is really different on.
Yes, that's amazing.
You can definitely notice that. These are no MacBook Pro, but
it's all good.
I had to create a shared folder with a link between the two computers. You got the link because I was not able to just copy the link from one to the other.
That's fantastic. Well, let's talk about. What's that? Sorry.
You can see me. At least I can see you because it was just getting on my nerves. I don't know, you talking to like a black wall.
It's all good. It's mostly an audio medium anyway. I think most people who ultimately watch this, it's mostly for the audio anyway. I don't know if video is as useful, but I do want to talk about JNation before we wrap up here. So that's coming up here in June. I'm always amazed at folks who organize events, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much effort and energy goes into putting on a 1, 2, 3 day event, 4-day event. They just sort of think it magically comes together. I was at Code Mash last week, and one of the interesting things that happened there is some of their swag didn't show up. It was supposed to be there on Tuesday, and it was supposed to be there at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, and then that became like 9 p.m. on Friday, and it's like, well, everyone's going to be gone by then, so it kind of doesn't do us any good. And there's all these weird things that happen. So how did you decide that organizing a user group wasn't quite enough work? You decided let's put on an entire event, and what are your experiences, thoughts around that?
The reason why we came up with the conference was because we don't have any tech conferences in Portugal, right? I mean, there were a few conferences, but most of the conferences were just like a mix of business stuff. They have like a couple of tech stuff, and they're not really appealing for the dev folks, right?
Sure.
And I mean, for some reason, I talked to people, and then I was already going to conferences around the world as a speaker. Well, first as an attendee, then as a speaker as well. And I felt that it was like really crappy that most people here in Portugal couldn't like see these events that so well, right? And I knew some of them. I mean, it's not really. I mean, we have to think about something here, and it is a reality, right? So, even while Portugal is in Europe, while the economic, the power of the country economic-wise is not, you cannot compare it to other countries in Europe, like Belgium or Netherlands, or now all in Netherlands, and I don't know how they want to call them these days. Germany, France, and so on, right? And because we are like on the edge of Europe, like traveling to any of these countries plus buying the ticket for the conference, it becomes really expensive for any
Sure.
Portuguese people to go outside Portugal to see these events, right? Even if you compare to Spain, which is closer to us, I mean, so it's the only country in Europe that we border, right? The closest one is the Barcelona one, and that's still far. I mean, you'll probably get like better prices to go over there. You'll get like an Ryanair fly, which is like a low cost company,
right?
Fly and probably get like a flight ticket for like 50 or 60 euros, maybe like 100, which is fine. But still, the ticket might cost you like 300 or 400 tickets to go to the conference. And I'm not joking. I mean, this is probably gonna sound like really bad, but the average wage for an engineer here may be like a third of that, or a fourth. Really depends. So it's hard for people to actually. I mean, they can ask it for the companies, but now companies will not going to send the entire force. They'll just send like one or two,
a handful of people, right?
So we wanted to come with like an affordable conference that people can go to, something close, and just bring like what people could see in other places, just do it here. And yeah, that was one way to do it. Let's try to do things here. Let's make it affordable. So we do it as like a non-profit organization. So the idea of the company is not to, or the idea of the conference is not to make money. Of course, not all. It's not to give. We want to make it sustainable. We don't want to make profit out of it, but we don't want that to also be like a burden or a financial burden. So we just try to keep it balanced. And we just basically we'll just charge you the amount of money that we need. So like a ticket price for like a Portuguese people, for Portuguese person. Well, not only for Portuguese because the prices are for everything, but we charge. So the lowest price we have is like 50 euros, which is very reasonable for someone here in Portugal. So it's easier to convince companies to send people over here. So we have companies that send us like 50 or 60 developers, right? I mean, it's better to send them here than to send it outside, right?
Right.
And yeah, I mean that was one of the main motivations, was to just have something over here that people could go and attend, to give them that opportunity, right? I also wanted, I mean, companies here. Also in Portugal, things are starting to change, but most of the companies from the IT world, they were like business services companies, right? Like custom-made software, and they were not very open to open source stuff.
Interesting.
Even though they were using it, right? It was hard for them, or they didn't have this mindset to collaborate with open source and like doing pull requests and of course, I mean, GitHub itself made it much easier for people to contribute, but still, companies still have to have that mindset of like allowing people to do that. So we also wanted for the conference to bring this mindset to the companies, right? And so bringing the speakers that do that stuff and passing that info to the attendees. And so we hope that the attendees will just push that internally into their company. So that was basically what we wanted to change and achieve, right? So yeah, we had the Java user group. We started that as a way for people to meet up after work and just discuss some technology. Again, because of the way that companies usually operate here, and again, this is changing, right? So you're usually only exposed to the things on your own company, right? And because you're working to this specific customer and this specific solution that you're working for that customer, right? You don't really have that many other experiences, right? So the Java user group was mostly for have other people from other companies to meet up and just share. Oh yeah, I have that issue. We solve it
Mhm.
that way, or yeah, we're using this technology and it's working great for us. Or no, that's completely crap. Don't use that, right? So give us that ability, and I mean, things just started to grow, and until it came to a point where we thought, okay, let's try to do a conference. I mean, it is so. I completely relate to what you're saying. It's a completely crazy idea. I have no idea why. I mean, I told you why, but
Right.
still think about it, and it is a terrible idea to implement because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So the way that I usually use to describe what a conference is running things in production without testing.
Yes. Yes. That's a great description.
Right, because there is no way that you can. I mean, you were saying like on Code Smash, and you're saying, oh yeah, they were had their swag to be. I mean, how you test that stuff? You cannot
You
test
can't.
that stuff, right?
You
So
can't.
I mean, you can probably order that and say, well, deliver that like a month in advance. But I mean, maybe you cannot even have that delivered to you a month in advance because.
Well, where are you going to put it, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
talking 10 or
I
20
mean,
boxes of stuff, you might not have space to store it. So you want to wait. You want to have
maybe
it
you
be
don't have.
delivered to the
I mean, maybe
venue.
you don't
And
have any space. Maybe you don't have the budget yet because I mean, you have to balance. You have like the money from the tickets coming in. You have
right,
the money from the sponsors coming in, right? So
right.
sometimes you cannot ask them to pay like in advance for like 3 months. No, I mean they
Hmm.
sometimes have like
Hmm.
periods where you pay. So maybe you don't have the money to make the order yet.
Right.
You don't have. You have don't. You maybe don't have the space. Maybe you don't even know how much you're gonna need. Right?
Hmm.
There's always going to be a time where you close the order, right? But if you
Right.
order it for like 3 months in advance, you have to order. I mean, maybe you ordered like 500, and then you have like 1,000.
Right.
So what you're gonna do? Are you gonna stick it to 500 because you don't have any more swag?
Right.
So it's like you have all these decisions, problems that you have to figure out. Which I mean, they are fun, but at the same time, they are time consuming, and then you get
Yes.
frustrated, right?
Yes.
And there are so many things that can go wrong. So that's why I'm saying that you're just trying to run something production without testing because
Hmm.
none of these things can be tested. And when you're trying to find like new ideas to do on a conference, I mean, you cannot just go, well, let's just gather here 1,000 people, get them in
Right.
here, and then we'll just see if this happens and see if this works out, right?
Right.
You can't, right? So you try that on a conference, and then you hope that that works, and if it doesn't,
Right.
then well, you're just not going to do that again, and you just hope that people are not going to get too much bother and not going to be annoyed for what you try to
Right.
do, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we things like speakers losing planes or like strikes on
Hmm.
planes, or
Hmm.
you have to replace speakers last, or like speakers getting COVID so they cannot travel,
Yep.
right? So that's pretty common. Sponsors sending them their boots and getting stuck on customs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No,
Uh,
there's a lot of variables, and there's only so many of them that you can squeeze out of the equation.
yeah, and
And
then you have to also know that. I mean, again, picking that example of the swag, you're in the hands of your suppliers, right? And it's not only one. You have the
multiple.
swag supplier, you have the catering
Yep.
guys, you have the audio and video guys, you have the streaming guys.
Hmm.
I mean, you have all of these people that you have to manage, right? And well, for you, you're doing one event, right?
Right.
So you're concerned with your event, and you, as much as you're just on top of them, they're only going to look at your event like a week in advance, most
Right.
of the time, because they have
Right.
other events, right? That's their
Hmm.
life, right? So they're not. I mean, if I'm bothering them right now, they're not going to answer me because they have events today,
Right.
right? So their focus is going to be the events they're going to have today and tomorrow and the next week. They're not going to focus on the event they're going to have in 6 months,
Hmm.
right? So that's one of the tricky parts, right? So you go around and then you go and talk to the catering guys, and they don't answer you, and then you call them, and they are on another event that they're doing.
Right.
And I mean, you understand, you have to understand that. I mean, that's their life. I mean, you cannot have like a catering only going to do like one event per year, right? They do like many events per week.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, their attention to you is only going to be focused on the last couple of weeks prior to your event, right? So that's when things can go terribly wrong. I mean, things can go wrong at any point.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And then, of course, how big of a fish are you compared to the other events that they're doing? You know, we're in many cases, the events that we're part of are comparatively small. You know, when you look at what some of these venues and whatnot will hold, and you've got all the variables of, well, with this venue, you have to use their in-house catering service, and their price for putting out a coffee spread is through the roof. You know, I remember an organizer I've done a lot of events for. You know, he typically would do it in a hotel, and, you know, he'd have like pop available for people. And he would occasionally see guests of the hotel just walk by and grab a pop. And he would often stop them and say, those aren't free. That's for my event. And the guy's like, well, fine, here's a quarter. He's like, no, you don't understand. I'm charged like $5 for every pop that comes out of this case. So it isn't like you went and bought a 12-pack at the convenience store. It's they upcharge considerably for those things. And a lot of folks don't appreciate that when they go to these things. And they're like, well, you know, how come you didn't do this? Or, you know, why is that? Why is the ticket as much as it is? There's a lot of moving parts, and they know they have a captive audience in many cases, and they charge accordingly. And, you know, it's the nature of the beast. But I mean, I commend you for doing it. A lot of respect for organizers. No getting around that.
It is tricky to find like a balance between like the amount of money you're going to charge to sponsors, the amount of money you're going to charge us for tickets, and then being able to grab all of that money and run the thing, right? And you have to book the venue, you have to pay for the venue, you have to pay for the catering, you have to pay. I mean, there are things that you can, of course, cut down, like swag, right? Those are the things that you're probably going to cut down if you're really in trouble.
Right.
Those are the things that also people like to get into a conference. So you have to think twice if you want to cut that out, right?
And some of that's your advertising for next year's event, and you know you want people to wear the shirt or the sweatshirt or the hat or the bag, and it's a balance.
Well, we even today we had a meeting. So now we start to organize things around September. That's when we have. So we usually, we do it in June, right? We left the summer vacations to go through, and then around September we start again to discuss next year. And I mean, things are starting slow, but now we're going to start in an occasion when we're going to have to meet like regularly with the team and like things to be like on top. So now like we have the CFP open. It's going to close down. It's going to close next, not next week. It's going to be the end of the month. So I hope that you can come.
It's in my list. It's in my list. It's on my list of things to do this week. It's
okay.
Oh man.
So then the CFP is going to close, and you have to review all the stuff. You have to send the approvals. At the same time, you have to go and talk to the sponsors to get the sponsors to come in, and then so now as closer to you get to the event is that when you start to get more and more work, right?
Yeah, and there's some things you can't do until right before. You know, you want to try to be as proactive as possible, and some of that stuff just
so there are things. I mean, sometimes some things you have to hold on and say, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to hire this service or I'm going to buy this because I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough budget for this. So I have to wait if I get enough ticket sales or I have enough. I mean, it is cool. I mean, some conferences like Devoxx, they basically sold out on the day they put the tickets to sale. And that's great for them. Unfortunately, we're not at that level yet. We hope that we'll get to that at some point, but it's probably tricky for us to do it. I mean, I think Devoxx, I mean, they've done like a terrific job. But most, I mean, probably they're like the outlier in the sense that, I mean, they're like 20 years. Most people know them, right? They are really like a global brand, and we are just like a local one. I mean, some people in the world already know us, which is great. but still, it is a struggle to convince like people. I mean, attendees are convinced, all of them, they want to return, right? They like it, but they have to go and ask for budget for their employees again, and we have to go and ask for budget to the companies again, right? We're trying like something new, which is trying to work out like multi-year contracts for sponsoring, which should alleviate some of that, so we don't have to go and repeat all the bureaucracy of like getting budget approved for the companies to sponsor.
Yeah, that's amazing how much of a pain that can be, to even in cases where you've sponsored in the past, and you would think it would just be an automatic. Companies have to go back through and think about it, and review it, and put it into the meat grinder of what other things they might want to try to do. And oh wow, so Phil's saying there's an event in Sweden that runs for 20 years. That's incredible, and apparently they're able to get enough sponsors to cover it. But I mean, that's the challenge. Sometimes you get lucky with that, but then you also have to walk that line of, you don't want it to just be a sales pitch either. If it's just a bunch of booths with people trying the hard press of, please give us your information so we can come try to sell you our wares or sell you our consultants or something, that doesn't make for a great event either. You know what I mean? So it's hard to find that balance.
Yeah, we try. So we try a couple of different things. So I think we can. I mean, we keep it. I mean, it's not really a secret, even though we don't advertise that as much, especially because we like it for people to just discover this on the conference day. So we know. I mean, sponsors, they don't go over there for free, right? They want to advertise their brand,
right? Of course,
they want to talk to the attendees, but at the same time, we don't want the attendees to feel pushed.
Right.
And we don't want like the attendees to feel obligated to go over there and speak, right? And we don't want like sponsors to don't get any traffic to their booths. So it is like a tricky part.
Yeah.
So all of these actually came together like a few years ago, where. So if you don't, I mean, you probably don't know. I'm not sure if I comment these to you, but probably the people that are listening haven't. We, on the second edition, we came this idea to come up with a theme on the conference. And the theme is nothing related with technology, just like the theme is just because it helps on the design of the conference, right? It helps on creating like a drawing for the swag. It helps on the colors that you're going to put on everything, right? It's kind of like when you have the wedding and you get like a theme for the wedding, right? I'm not sure if you have that on US, but usually here in Portugal, they weddings have these themes where you usually have like theme around traveling, and then you have all, right? So we have the exact same idea on the conference. So we'll come up with a theme, and for some reason, the theme that we came up first was around circus, and the circus theme became because we thought, well, this is like people are on the stage, right? So we want this to be like a spectacle, like kind of spectacle thing. Mm-hmm. So we will try to come like with a circus theme, right? And then I will start to think about, well, circus actually linked with carnival fairs. And then on carnival fairs, you have all these ticket things. I mean, they're really popular in the US, right? Where you just go and buy tickets and trade them from other stuff.
Yep.
Right. So we apply the same thing to the conference, right? So we have these ticket things where like booths will give you tickets, and then you can trade them for stuff in the conference.
Sure.
And so people can trade them for like ice cream. So basically, at that point was for circus-related stuff, like what we can expect to find in a circus, like ice creams, popcorn, like cotton candy, and we have all of that. So all the food was still free, but all of those things we call add-ons, like, I mean, people will not go there to eat popcorn, but they'll still, if they want to have some popcorn, they'll have to have a ticket and trade it. And while you get tickets, you go to the booth and talk to someone, and they'll give you a ticket.
Right.
And then we also have other stuff. So instead of having people or having booths like giving stuff away, I mean, if they want to give stuff away, they give. But part of the things that we offer is then, okay, we have like a bunch of things, and cool things that people may want to have, like Raspberry Pis, or like AirPods, or like everlasting notebooks.
Oh, sure.
Some things like that, like small things. They're not really that expensive, but things that people like to have.
Mm-hmm.
And well, all of them have like a ticket cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a Raspberry Pi is like 16 tickets. And well, you just go to the booth and you just grab the 16 tickets, and then you can just come to the conference booth and you can trade the tickets for the Raspberry Pi.
Nice.
So that creates. So the sponsors like is dynamic because it's completely
Right.
optional, right? In the sense, so like people, because they want this, they go to the booths to take them, and so that's a way for them to go to the booths.
Mm-hmm.
For people that don't want to go to the booth, it's completely optional because it doesn't make you missing out on the conference, right? So you still get all the food, you still go to the sessions. You don't. I mean, it's a completely optional part. So we think that's like a good balance in there. And yeah, so people go to the booths. They'll just talk to people, and I mean, if the one of the cool tricks is if someone goes over there because you just want to take a little, just hand you over one. But if you feel you have like a really good conversation with someone, you can give them like 10 or even 16, right? So
sure.
you just the booth itself can reward the person in different ways,
right?
And because it's us that handle all this process and all the exchanging of things, so the booths themselves, they don't have to worry about giving stuff away, right? So we think that this we call this gamification. Mostly, like you can pretty much call it gamification, right?
Oh, right, totally.
I mean, some people don't enjoy it, but I think it's like a small minority. Most people just enjoy it, right? It's really hard.
But to your point, you don't have to participate, right? I mean, if you don't want to, then you just hang back, and it's no skin off your back. You didn't miss out on anything. You just don't participate, and that's
I mean, you don't miss out. So basically, you don't miss out on the core stuff of the conference, which are the sessions, right?
Right.
That's why while you're paying to go over there, you don't gonna miss out of any of that, and you're not gonna be out of things to eat. You're still gonna have coffee breaks and lunch.
Right.
But if you want an ice cream, which I mean, we say, well, an ice cream is like an add-on, right? So it's not something that you get for food. It's not something that needs to be sustained at your day. So it's like I don't know how you call it in English. Probably like
an upcharge,
but it's like junk food. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, junk food's a good word. Yep.
Well, yeah. Then for that, you're gonna need a ticket to trade for.
Sure. That makes sense.
And so we have been using this system. So last year our team was around steampunk.
Oh yeah.
So that's why you see me with. So that's why you see my profile picture like that, which ended up looking like Slash.
Yes, I made that comment. I was going to joke about that. We talked about in the pre-show that I've never seen you in Slash in the same place twice.
But it was an accident because I was actually dressed as a steampunk person for the keynote.
Okay.
And then I had that hat, and then accidentally, then people looking, but you actually look like Slash, not like a steampunk person. Well, I still look like a steampunk person, but then because of the hair and the beard, it kind of looked like Slash as well.
That's what my wonderful creative people decided to use for the bumper. So that's what you'll see out on the YouTube.
Yeah, that's fine. But basically, that's the story. Then the story was I took that picture. So there were like multiple pictures taken in the conference, and then I dressed myself as the team for the keynote or for the opening keynote. I was dressed as a steampunk person, and that's where the picture came from. And well, that was the theme for last year.
Nice.
And so for the token stuff, so on when we had the carnival fair or the circus stuff, we had these tickets made in paper, kind of like you have them like on a real circus with like the conference logo and stuff like that. And for the steampunk stuff, we have these cogwheels in metal that you'll just trade them around.
Sure.
So it was, so again, having the team around the conference makes things really cool,
Yeah.
because it's been easier to bring everything together. Like, so not sure, I don't have the t-shirt right now, but even so, our logo is like a howl, right? We pick up the owl because, I mean, owl represents wisdom and knowledge. So that's what conference also all about. And basically our designer is a really good guy. It's an awesome guy. So he drew up this howl and a steampunk style, right? And the year
That's
before, he
awesome.
drew the owls in like this circus style, right? So then we make the t-shirt and all the swag and all the designs around that, right? So it becomes so. I think it becomes something fun, right? So people get the maze.
Right.
We have, so on the circus stuff, we actually hire like artists from circus, and they were like just like doing stuff during the day. They were doing juggling and like spitting fire, stuff like that. And for the steampunk stuff, we had like these artists that were like all dressed as steampunk, and they were just taking pictures with people, and we're just like dancing and doing stuff as well.
Right.
So it is another way to just entertain people.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think that's part of what makes these events so much fun, and it's a lot of what I missed when we were doing this all remotely, and it's been good to be back out. There's no getting around it. You know, events are still taking a little bit of time, I think, to get back on their feet. You know, we're certainly seeing lower numbers than we saw pre-pandemic, and I'm hopeful that over the course of the next year or two, that'll eventually get back to where we were, because I think there is a lot to be gained by being around our peers on a semi-regular basis. And, you know, I think the work from home part's probably not going to change anytime soon. And so having these events as a place to connect, reconnect, and just steep in this stuff, to me, is powerful. But well, Roberto, I don't want to take, I mean, it's already pretty late for you, man. I thank you so much for hanging out with me, brother. I really appreciate it.
No worries. You know, for probably for most people in Europe, it will be very late. But people in Portugal, and myself included, their concept of late is different.
Yes.
So for people in Portugal, like 7:30 is early. Even though it's late in the evening or late in the afternoon, it's still early, right? So
it's funny you mentioned that, because the other day I was watching a Barcelona football match, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is pretty late for a game. It's got to be like 10:30 in Madrid, and because I'm pretty sure it was, I can't remember, maybe it was it's Barcelona. So it was in Barcelona itself, I think. But whoever they were playing, I did the math, and I'm like, this is like 10:30. What's going on? Oh wait, that's right, it's Spain. Never mind. You know,
Spain is the same, right? So
right, it's probably the early game.
For Portugal and Spain, the concept of late is different from the rest of Europe.
Very different. Yeah.
So when people usually probably in Germany and France, they're probably eating dinner at, well, they're already eat dinner at that time. So usually they eat dinner at 7:30. Now it's 8:30 on Central Europe.
Sure.
So I'll probably gonna only eat dinner in like 2 hours or so. That's when. So when I'm eating dinner, most of Europe is already sleeping.
There you go. Well, I very much appreciate your time, my friend. I look forward to us crossing paths multiple times here in 23. And
I mean,
thanks
thank
for
you so much for
me.
invitation. It was really fun to be here with you. I mean, now I've already been here, but feel free to invite me if you miss any other people. I'll be happy to come in here and talk to you again.
Fantastic, man. I appreciate it. And I agree. So Fuel made the comment about this, the sun is coming back in Norway, and I can relate, because I don't have quite as bad of a sun problem as Norway does, but I'm finally getting to the point now where sun's a little later in the evening here in Minnesota, and I very much appreciate that, because it's pretty brutal when it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, Portugal is not really that bad on that. So we even on winter we get sun from maybe 8 till 6 or 5.
Okay, sure.
And that's on the. So we still get like a lot of time of sun. And that's on the shortest day, which is 23 of December, I think, or 21.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in that range. So now days are getting bigger again.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be on that side of the light exchange, at least in our side of the hemispheres. But
yeah.
All right, well, my friend, thank you very much. Enjoy dinner. It's good hanging out with you, and I look forward to chatting with you again here later this year. And until then, have a great evening, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.